Let's talk a little for people that don't know about the pre-code, what the code is. What was the pre-code era?
Well, in an effort to avoid the government coming in and legislating and regulating the content of motion pictures, the Motion Picture Association of America, the MPAA, drafted their own rules. The head of it was William Hayes, and Hayes drafted what became known as the Hayes Code in 1930.
Right.
And they really didn't get their teeth sunk into it and really didn't get up and running in the industry until about 34.
So this was to tell people what could and couldn't be done.
This was an attempt to control content in film. Now, the interesting thing is that a lot of people are interested, as you know, and you know better than anybody, in pre-code films, because right up until when that code was enforced in 34, pre-1934, filmmakers had a lot of a license, and there was a lot of liberal content in filmmaking, which led to some very, very interesting films.
Right. Golddiggers in 1933 kind of reinforces what our last film showed. You know, scantily clad chorus girls and all that. That wasn't just a isolated case. That there were a lot of movies like this taking advantage of the fact they could get away with almost anything.
Well, once again, I mean, many of the films you see in this pre-code, through this pre-code prism, it's sex. It's skin.
And talking about it, loose living.
And talking about, people who are all kind of vibing each other about sexuality.
But you could also see why people in smaller towns and neighborhoods and everything like that could get very upset about all that, because it was like introducing, you know, a lot of big city ideas or big city behavior, you know, to the country at large.
Right. I mean, some films in this pre-code tableau we're looking at, it's an amorality or an immorality that leads to some dramatic consequences. So someone's cheating on someone, a murder results. I mean, there's a very dramatic or melodramatic component that comes rushing up behind that. But this is more playful. This is Busby Berkeley again. It's Mervyn LeRoy again. It's Warren William, who was the king of pre-code, they called him. I mean, his bio did a lot of these films where there was a kind of a salty, salacious component to it. And this is all for fun, which I think is what they found objectionable.
Right.
As much as it's young people kind of tossing their heads back and saying, let's just have some fun and have some loose sex, or at least intimate that, it seemed innocent and kind of playful. And I think that's what the code wanted to address.
But it can also be
the casual.
You know, today our morality is such that these things aren't particularly shocking that we're seeing in the movies and everything like that, because we see so much now on television and in films and in the theater. But we have to remember what the era, this was the early 1930s. Morality was totally different then. People behaved in a much more Puritan way than they do now. So to have these movies come in, kind of introducing a whole different kind of morality in small towns and everything like that, I think, I understand, would be very upsetting to people.
Well, listen, morality, we've decided in our society, and it's almost impossible to have this conversation without saying this, morality, we've decided, is a very individual choice. What you do, what you don't do, you'll have to answer for that yourself later on. Our society is more and more and more making that an individual choice, and not having society as a whole impose that on, on society
as
itself.
They did back then.
Yeah, as they did back then, and as people agreed to. It wasn't just a government imposition. The government imposition reflected, I believe, the Hayes Code reflected a much more socially acceptable view that there be some retaining wall against you just abandoning yourself to all your lusts and all your 7 deadly sins. And people were encouraged to be a little more careful. There's a wall there for people's behavior. And many people would knock down that wall and behave as they wanted to. But at least there was a wall for people to stop and pause and think about what they were doing. And today we have no wall. Now people are told you just do whatever you want to do and you have complete independence.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see the movie. Here it is from Warner Brothers in 1933, directed by Mervyn LeRoy. Golddiggers of 1933.